Once upon a time, in the heart of European folklore, this is the tale of Snow White, one of the most beloved fairy tales ever told. First published in 1812 by the German folklorists Brothers Grimm, this story has been passed down through generations, growing from oral tradition to printed legacy. Originally titled Schneewittchen, Snow White has inspired plays, books, and films for over 2 centuries. Today, KhanTales presents a cinematic retelling of this timeless tale, reimagined in a medieval, dark fantasy world. Let the legend begin.
Long ago, in a kingdom almost lost to time, there lived a gentle and radiant princess named Snow White. Despite her wicked stepmother, the queen, forcing her into rags and treating her no better than a servant, Snow White's spirit remained unbroken. Her kindness and pure heart shone brighter than any jewel in the realm. Each morning the vain queen stood before her enchanted mirror.
Magic mirror on the wall,
She demanded.
who is the fairest one of all?
For years the mirror fed her pride with the same answer. But then, one morning, everything changed. The mirror replied,
Snow White is now the fairest in the land.
The words pierced her heart with a jealousy so fierce it burned through her very soul. As she worked, Snow White sang softly into the cool depths of a wishing well, her gentle voice carrying a prayer for true love. Nearby, a handsome prince heard her song. He paused, completely captivated by the beauty in her voice and the hope in her heart. In that moment, love blossomed within the prince's soul. Startled and shy, Snow White fled to the castle balcony, but as he sang to her with all the longing in his heart, she kissed a dove and sent it down to him, her silent promise carried on its tiny wings. Blinded by envy, the queen devised a cruel plan. She summoned her loyal huntsman.
Take Snow White deep into the forest.
She ordered coldly.
Kill her and bring back her heart. And this.
She handed him a carved wooden box, her eyes dark with merciless resolve. Fearing the queen's wrath, the huntsman led Snow White deep into the forest under the pretense of gathering wildflowers. Snow White felt free for the first time in so long. She wandered among the blossoms, her sweet voice filling the forest with songs of her beloved prince. Unaware of the huntsman's dark intentions, Snow White paused to comfort a tiny baby bird that had fallen from its nest.
Don't be afraid.
She whispered gently.
Your mama and papa can't be far.
But behind her, the huntsman crept closer, dagger trembling in his grasp. Just as she sensed danger, Snow White turned and let out a cry of fear. Yet looking into her innocent eyes, the huntsman's resolve crumbled.
Forgive me.
He pleaded desperately.
I cannot harm you.
He warned her.
You must run. Hide. The queen has lost her mind.
Terrified, Snow White fled into the shadowy forest. The woods twisted around her, dark and unfamiliar. Strange noises filled the air. Owls hooted from above, and bats swooped down, their wings brushing against her as tangled branches clawed at her cloak. The farther she ran, the more lost she became. Exhausted and trembling, Snow White collapsed onto the damp earth, her sobs echoing through the trees. Hidden in the shadows, mysterious, glowing eyes watched her every move. From the shadows, curious forest creatures emerged, their gentle eyes full of concern. Snow White wiped away her tears and offered them a small smile.
Everything will be all right.
She whispered softly, but with a sigh she added,
I do need somewhere to sleep tonight. Do any of you know where I might stay?
Without hesitation, the animals turned and began leading her deeper into the forest. They guided her through mossy paths until the trees opened to reveal a sunlit clearing. There, nestled among the flowers, stood a tiny, charming cottage. Snow White clasped her hands in delight.
It's so beautiful, just like a little doll's house.
Eager to see who lived there, Snow White hurried to a window and peered inside. But the cottage was dark and quiet. She knocked softly, then pushed the door open with care.
Hello?
She called out, her voice echoing through the silence.
May I come in?
Inside, she saw 7 tiny chairs and a room left in terrible disarray. Snow White tilted her head thoughtfully.
7 little children must live here.
She murmured. Determined to help, she smiled and said,
We'll clean it as a surprise.
Singing sweetly, she worked alongside her animal friends until the cottage sparkled with warmth and life. Meanwhile, deep within a nearby mine, 7 dwarfs worked tirelessly, chiseling beautiful diamonds and gleaming jewels from the rock. Little did they know, their small cottage was being lovingly cleaned by a gentle princess with a heart of gold. As the sun dipped below the treetops, the dwarfs began their journey home. Marching along the forest path, they sang a cheerful tune, unaware that a sweet surprise awaited them in their little cottage that evening. Upstairs, after finishing the cleaning, Snow White stepped into a small bedroom. Her eyes widened with wonder as she saw 7 tiny wooden beds lined neatly in a row, each with a carved name upon its headboard. Doc, Happy, Sneezy, Dopey, Grumpy, Bashful, and Sleepy. Feeling suddenly weary, Snow White let out a soft yawn.
I'm feeling rather sleepy myself.
She whispered. She lay across the little beds, and the animals, with tender care, covered her with a woven sheet. Within moments, she drifted into a peaceful slumber. That night, the dwarfs arrived home, expecting darkness and silence. But to their surprise, smoke curled from the chimney, and warm light glowed through the windows. The dwarfs exchanged nervous glances.
We'll sneak up a monster,
Doc whispered, trying to sound brave.
Follow me.
Tiptoeing into the cottage, the dwarves moved carefully, trying not to make a sound. But as they looked around, their eyes widened in shock. Their cluttered home was spotless. Grumpy scowled deeply.
There's dirty work afoot,
he grumbled. Just then, a faint noise from upstairs made them freeze. Without a word, they began creeping towards the bedroom to investigate. Dopey led the dwarves as they tiptoed into the bedroom. Just then, Snow White stirred beneath the sheet, stretching and letting out a sleepy yawn. The dwarves gasped in terror, their eyes wide with fear.
a monster!
They cried out in trembling voices. Doc, gathering his courage, stepped forward and gently pulled back the sheet. His eyes softened with surprise.
Why, it's a girl,
he whispered. The dwarves stood frozen, gazing at Snow White in awe. Bashful blushed deeply.
She's beautiful,
he murmured shyly.
just like an angel.
Dwarf's whispers awakened Snow White. She sat up slowly, her blue eyes wide with wonder as she smiled at them kindly.
Why, you're not children.
She said softly, her voice filled with warmth. Grumpy crossed his arms and frowned.
How do you do what?
he grumbled. But her sweet smile melted their hearts, and even Grumpy couldn't hide the flicker of a grin. Snow White glanced at each dwarf with a knowing smile, easily guessing their names one by one. Then with a trembling voice she told them about the evil queen and her cruel plan.
Please, don't send me away.
She pleaded, her eyes filled with silent fear. The dwarfs exchanged solemn nods. They all agreed she could stay, all except Grumpy, who folded his arms stubbornly, refusing to trust any mention of the queen. Snow White, her voice gentle yet firm, promised to cook and clean for the dwarfs as gratitude for their kindness. That evening, she had dinner ready on the table, steaming and delicious. But as she looked at the dwarfs, she shook her head.
March straight outside and wash up.
She said firmly, hands on her hips.
You're not getting a single bite until you do.
The dwarfs grumbled and sighed, clearly not fond of washing. But seeing Snow White's gentle yet determined expression, they obeyed. All except Grumpy, who stood with arms crossed and a scowl darkening his face.
Her tricks are already working,
he muttered under his breath as the others began to scrub their faces and hands. But Grumpy's defiance didn't last long.
Get him!
Doc shouted with unexpected authority. In an instant, the other dwarves lunged forward, grabbing Grumpy and hauling him to the wooden tub. He spluttered and kicked as they scrubbed his hands, his face, even his thick beard, leaving him dripping wet but squeaky clean for dinner. Far away from the dwarf's warm, cheerful cottage, darkness loomed. High in the cold, silent castle tower, a single flickering light burned through the night, casting long shadows across stone walls as the queen plotted her next move. Once more, the queen stood before her magic mirror, her eyes burning with rage.
Mirror, mirror on the wall,
She hissed.
who is the fairest one of all?
The mirror's voice echoed coldly.
Snow White still lives, the fairest in the land. It is the heart of a pig you hold in your hand.
The queen's face twisted with fury as she realized the huntsman had betrayed her. With a snarl, the queen swept down into her dungeon laboratory. Bubbling pots and glowing vials lined dark stone shelves. She poured a foul green liquid into a goblet, watching it hiss and steam.
Now, begin thy magic spell.
She commanded, lifting the potion to her lips and drinking deeply, her eyes glowing with sinister triumph. In mere moments, the queen's transformation began. Her beauty withered away as her skin shriveled and her hair turned to wiry gray strands. She cackled, her voice rasping with delight.
Perfect. The perfect disguise.
She whispered, staring at her twisted reflection with cruel satisfaction. Back at the dwarves' cottage, warmth and laughter filled the room. Dinner was done, and Snow White played sweet melodies while the dwarves sang silly songs. Even Grumpy joined in, thumping away at an old wooden pipe organ with a grin he tried to hide. Far away, in her cold stone dungeon, the queen stirred a bubbling cauldron with a sinister smile. She dipped a flawless red apple into the potion as it hissed and smoked.
One bite. Just one bite.
She whispered darkly.
And her eyes will close forever.
Only love's first kiss could break the spell, but she would never allow that. All night the wicked queen, disguised as an old peddler woman, crept silently through the moonlit forest. In her basket lay bright red apples, and hidden among them the poisoned one. As dawn broke, she reached the clearing near the dwarf's cottage. She waited patiently, eyes gleaming, for the dwarfs to leave their beloved Snow White alone. At sunrise, the dwarfs prepared for another day in the mines. Snow White kissed each one tenderly on the cheek, her smile filling their hearts with warmth. Dopey beamed as he managed to steal 2 kisses, blushing with delight. Doc looked back at her with concern.
Beware of strangers,
He warned gently. Grumpy grumbled,
don't let nobody or nothing into this house.
his voice rough but caring beneath it all. As Snow White busied herself making a warm apple pie, a shadow fell across the kitchen window. Startled, she looked up to see an old woman peering in with a crooked smile.
Apple pies. Nothing makes men's mouths water more.
The old woman rasped, holding out a bright red apple.
Here, dearie, have a bite.
But Snow White's little bird friends sensed danger. Before she could reach for the apple, they swooped down, pecking at the old woman's tangled hair and flapping their wings furiously around her face, trying to drive her away. Snow White gasped, scolding them softly.
Stop that this instant! Shame on you for frightening a poor old lady.
The old woman clutched her chest dramatically.
Oh, my poor heart.
She groaned weakly.
Take me inside. Just a sip of water, please.
Snow White's gentle heart melted at once as she guided the old woman into the cottage. Her forest friends watched in silent alarm, their tiny eyes filled with fear. They knew their princess was in grave danger. Without wasting a moment, the birds and forest animals raced through the woods towards the diamond mine. They tugged frantically at the dwarfs' beards and hats, pulled at their sleeves and pushed them from behind with all their tiny might. Finally, Doc's eyes widened with understanding.
The Queen! It's Snow White!
He cried out. Grumpy slammed his fist into his palm.
We gotta save her. Now.
Back at the cottage, the old hag held out the poisoned apple once more.
It's a magic wishing apple, dearie.
She crooned softly. Snow White looked at her with wide, hopeful eyes, thinking only of her beloved prince. She took the apple in her delicate hand and whispered,
I wish.
Snow White closed her eyes, lifted the apple to her lips, and took a small, trusting bite. Within moments, her delicate fingers loosened, and the poisoned apple slipped from her grasp. She collapsed to the cold cottage floor, her face pale and still. The old hag cackled triumphantly.
At last, I shall be the fairest in the land.
As the old witch fled the cottage, the dwarfs and forest animals charged through the pouring rain after her, their hearts pounding with fear and anger. Mud splashed under their feet as thunder rolled above. They were determined. They would not let her escape justice. The dwarfs chased her up a steep rocky hill, their breaths ragged and their hearts fierce with courage. The old hag scrambled higher until at last she stood trembling on the edge of a cliff.
I'm trapped,
she whispered in terror. Desperate, she grabbed a broken tree limb and pried at an enormous boulder above her, hoping to crush the dwarfs below. Suddenly, a blinding bolt of lightning split the stormy sky. It struck the ledge beneath her feet with a deafening crack. The rocky edge crumbled away, and with a final, terrible scream, the old witch fell into the black abyss below, never to be seen again. When the dwarfs returned to the silent cottage, they found Snow White lying cold and lifeless. Their hearts broke as they gazed upon her still beauty. But she was so fair, even in death, that they could not bear to bury her. With loving care, they built a coffin of gold and glass, and there they kept watch over her, day after day, season after season. Then one afternoon, a handsome prince arrived, searching far and wide for the princess whose song had once captured his heart. Seeing her lying silent within the glass coffin, he knelt down, his eyes brimming with tears. He kissed her gently, and that single kiss, love's first kiss, broke the queen's cruel spell. With a quiet sigh, Snow White stirred. Slowly she opened her eyes and smiled with radiant joy. The prince shouted with happiness, lifting her into his strong arms. Around them the dwarfs danced and laughed, and the forest rang with the calls of animals rejoicing. Snow White was alive. Snow White kissed each dwarf goodbye, promising them she would return to visit soon. The prince helped her onto his majestic white horse, his eyes filled with love and devotion. Together, they rode away down the forest path towards his grand medieval castle, its towers glowing in the golden morning light. And there, they lived happily ever after.
And so Snow White found her happily ever after. Even today, her story reminds us that true love, kindness, and bravery can conquer even the darkest of hearts. Thank you for watching this cinematic tale brought to life by KhanTales. Subscribe for more fairy tales, folklore, and medieval myths, all beautifully reimagined for the modern world. Until next time, stay enchanted.